and welcome to the GEP SMART Supplier Training. For today's session, we'll go through the following agenda. GEP SMART tool, what is it? How to sign in, supplier profile, what the supplier module is. We'll talk about the left-hand side taskbar, how to access the help center, how to maintain your personal profile, how to log out, how to view, negotiate, and manage a contract, how to respond to a sourcing event, and then we'll end it up with questions. So what is GEP SMART? About a year ago, we started down the path of identifying a new procurement tool as it relates to sourcing and contracting. And based on that evaluation, we ended up selecting GEP and their module or platform called GEP SMART. So the move to GEP SMART allows us to replace a number of legacy systems while streamlining the sourcing and contracting process. The benefits of the new system will include better defined workflows, one central repository for contractual and sourcing documents, improved ability to track the status of sourcing and contract execution, reduced overall time to conduct sourcing events and negotiate and execute contracts, enhanced communication abilities, and greater transparency of sourcing and contracting event details. So when you think of BidNet, for example, this will replace BidNet. How to sign in? You, if you have not received so or have not done so, you'll receive a link for GEP production, and that production link is smart.gep.com, and you must use Chrome or Edge. Do not use Internet Explorer or Firefox browsers. When you get to the GEP login page, you'll be required to enter your username and password. So if I go back to the system, and you're seeing this from a supplier's perspective, so I'm acting as a supplier today. I will put in my username, my password, that will take me to my home page within GEP SMART. If you do not have a username and password, you must proceed to do the following. You may have received this email from us, but essentially Colorado Springs Utilities is in the process of transitioning from BidNet Rocky Mountain e-purchasing to GEP SMART, our sourcing and contracting tool. Your company must be registered in GEP SMART to view or participate in our sourcing events once the new system goes live on August 23rd. There is no cost to register, and it only takes a few minutes, but it is critical for our partnership going forward. To begin the process, please email Colorado Springs Utilities at supplieronboarding@csu.org with your company name, primary contact name, email, phone number, and your federal tax ID or a copy of your W-9. Once we receive your information, we will create you as a supplier in the system and send you an email with the link for you to complete the registration information. And if you have any questions about this process, please send an email to procurement@csu.org. If I go back to the system, you'll see that I'm actually logged in as a supplier, and I'm looking at my home page. Any questions so far? If no, we'll go to the supplier profile, your profile. So once you are signed into GEP SMART, make sure your current supplier profile is current and accurate. Check marks indicate that the information within the section has been fully completed. A circle that's partially filled indicates that there could be missing information, but not always. So note, as not all information is required, some circles may never show fully completed. And if you have any questions about the process for completing these sections, please send us an email at procurement@csu.org. So if I go back to the software and click on supplier profile, that will take me to my company profile. And this is where I have the opportunity to update various basic details as it relates to my legal name, parent company name, doing business as, the category that or categories that I'm aligned to. And this is pretty critical, team. You want to make sure that you're aligned to the goods and or services that you're capable of supplying. And so when you click on the category field, you're going to see there's 4 levels of categorization here. This is level 1. So construction and engineering, direct materials and services, indirect materials and services, and technology. Non-procurable, unclassified will not be used by you. But let's say, for example, I'm a supplier of direct materials and services. You can drill down. So if I click on the arrow, this will drill down to level 2. And under level 2, you'll see that I have a lot of other level 2 categories to choose from. Chemicals and gases, electrical, energy and utilities, filtration, etc. Well, let's say I'm a supplier of chemicals and gases. I can drill down to level 3. So do I supply just chemicals? Do I supply just gases? Or do I supply both? Let's say I only supply chemicals. I can click on the arrow one more time, and that takes me to level 4, which is the lowest level of categorization. And here, I can select which categories or which specific chemicals I can provide. And maybe I'm just a provider of chlorine. So in that case, I would pick chlorine, and anytime utilities is going to go out with an RFP, an IFB, an RFQ as it relates to chlorine, any supplier that is aligned to that category would be invited to that event. So it's really important that you make sure that you're aligned to the right category or categories for the goods and or services that your company can offer. Okay. Then there's just other basic information within your profile. Identification information really talks about your DUNS number and your federal tax ID number. Certificates, this is not mandatory, but you can actually upload your certificates as it relates to whether you're minority owned, veteran owned, woman owned, certificate of incorporation. So it's like any certificates that you want utilities to be informed of. Registration information is really your primary registration form that you initially completed, and that would be reflected in this section. Location information talks about your primary place of business. Here you can identify your location name, your phone number, what type of location is this? Is it headquarters? You can add new locations. So if I click on add new location, again, I can put in the location name, the address, city, county, country, state, zip code, phone numbers. So pretty basic information for adding other locations. Contact information is critical. This is identifying specific contacts that should be aligned to this account. So you'll want to make sure that you add the appropriate parties in this section here. Business information, and it's interesting. I'm not sure why it's not showing up here, but let me refresh my screen. Here we go. Talked about that, contact information. So here you'll see, again, the full name, their email ID, their phone numbers, their mobile numbers. So again, it's the team members you want to be associated with this account. Business information is not mandatory. It really talks about your company as it relates to your annual revenue, profit, average profit percentage, years of incorporation, business type, whether you're private, public, a manufacturer, a distributor, etc., a contractor, number of employees. And then this really doesn't relate to us because, again, we're not using GEP SMART as a procure to pay tool. So as it relates to purchase orders and invoices, this is not the place. We'll continue to use our current systems, for the issuance of purchase orders and the payment of invoices. Transaction type, again, really isn't applicable. Unfortunately, we can't get rid of this information from GEP SMART because it's just a common platform across many different customers. But again, you'll see a lot of this information is applicable for procure to pay for transaction types. So I wouldn't really worry too much about this section. Marketing information indicates whether you want to share your website, your LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter account. So again, any marketing information you want to share with utilities to get to know you better. And essentially that's it in terms of your registration and your profile. The supplier module. So under the supplier module at the very top, there's two sections. So under the form section, this is what we just talked about a little bit a minute ago. It's the supplier's primary registration form. So it's just really a summation of what you submitted. And then the scorecard, we'll be utilizing this feature at a later point in time. However, this section will be used to assess your performance, your overall performance, as it relates to quality, delivery, cost management, technical and commercial support, and overall relationship. Our hope is that we'll start to develop and define this program towards the end of this year, and then officially roll it out across the company and our supply base at the end of next year. So again, if I go back to the software and go back home and click on Supplier, you'll see there's two tabs, Form and Scorecard. And again, at this point in time, the Supplier tab here will not have a direct impact on you today. The left-hand side taskbar, very simple. You have three different icons: Home, My Task, Supplier Profile that we just talked about. Under the Home, this will take you to your default home page. My Tasks will show action pending and follow-up for specific actions or tasks that you, the supplier, must complete. So if I go back to the software, there's the three tasks or icons. If I click on Home, you'll see that takes me back to my home page, which I have defaulted to sourcing. Now, let's say you guys want to default the contract module as your home page. There's a icon called My Bookmarks. Looks like a flag. And so if you click on My Bookmarks, it's just like having your favorites on Internet Explorer or Google Chrome, right? You have this star. So I can unmark that as the home page. I can go to the contract module, mark the home page with a star. And now if I go back to My Tasks and I click Home, you'll see that the contract page is now my default home page. So pretty simple. Help Center. So to access the Help Center, you'll click on this icon. It's a question mark with a circle, and then you'll click on Help Center. This will allow you, the supplier, to access documents that will assist the supplier with questions or how-to as it relates to the contract, sourcing, or supplier modules. So if I go back to the software, I click on this icon, the question mark within a circle, click on Help Center. You'll see these are the three modules that are available to you. And within each module, there are reference guides or manuals that'll help you answer your questions of how to. And their plan will be to upload this presentation also under the Help repository. Personal profile. So each one of you, everyone that is a member or identified as a contact within the company's profile will have to be a registered user of GEP SMART. And when you register as a user, your initials will pop up in the upper right-hand corner. So in this example, I have Nancy Jones. But you want to maintain your personal profile. And it's very basic information. Your account settings is first name, last name, user email, username, phone numbers, regional settings as it relates to time zone, language, country. And then if you're going to be a signatory of the contractual documents, this defaults to enable signature for the contract. You'll have GEP actually create your signature. You will not upload a custom signature. You can if you want to, but GEP will just create your own if you don't want to. And then you have the ability to also set your signature password, which I would highly encourage you to do so that it is unique to yourself. So if I go back to the software, click on JS for Jim Smith, Jim Smith's profile will come up. Jim has the ability to update his information and save it. To log out, very simple. You'll click on the three dots in the upper right-hand corner, click on the red log out button, and you'll be logged out. I go back to the software, click on the three buttons. There's the red icon for log out, and that will log you out. Any questions up to this point? Okay. How do you negotiate and manage a contract? So you'll click on the contract tab at the top of your menu. When the contract module page comes up, the metrics at the top reflect how many contracts you, the supplier, will have in total, live, team review pending, and so forth. So it's at your dashboard. And then below the dashboard are all the various contractual documents that have been negotiated or could be in draft mode or canceled, will be defined under the contract name. So if I go back to the software, I click on contracts, that's my default homepage now. You'll see here's my dashboard. I have 18 in total, 10 are live, meaning executed. 3 are pending team review, 1's been approved, and so forth, right? So it's just a summary of the current status of the various contracts that I'm negotiating with Colorado Springs Utilities. And then right below it would be a summary of all the contracts that are in place or being worked on. Okay. When you open the contract name, you'll see all the various sections of the contract on the left-hand side. If I go back to the software and I click on today's training session, supplier training August 12th, on the left-hand side, you'll see all the applicable sections related to this contract. And we'll go through each one. So under basic details, you'll notice that there's a contract name, and that will default to the supplier name, contract number, and contract initiation date. The contract number is a unique number aligned to this contract, is a number created by GEP. Document type is a contract template used to create this contract. So if you can imagine, here at Utilities, we have a large number of templates, I think of around 15. And so depending upon the type of good and or service you're providing, we'll define the contract template that we pursue with you. Contract type will be of 3 different options. It will be a sub-agreement, non-disclosure agreement, or a master agreement. If we're doing a task order, an amendment, a change order against an existing master agreement, they'll be referred to as a sub-agreement contract type. If it's going to be an independent non-disclosure agreement, we would identify the contract type as non-disclosure. Otherwise, it'll be referred to as a master agreement. Contract administrator is the Colorado Springs Utilities sourcing owner. Description is a short description of what this contract relates to. So in this example, as a sourcing owner, I said this is a 5-year agreement with 2 5-year renewal periods with 123 company. We're supplying 3-phase transformers across the enterprise. In the section applicable for, this identifies the category, the utilities organization entity, and the region that this contract is aligned to. So as it relates to the category, it refers to the goods and or services the supplier is providing under this contract. The org entity is the Colorado Springs Utilities entity or entities that can leverage this contract, and region will always default to Colorado Springs. If I go back to the software, here's the basic details we had discussed, and then under applicable for, we had talked about the category, org entity, and region. Under the section internal party, the name will always be Colorado Springs Utilities. So if I go back to the software, click on internal party, you'll notice the name Colorado Springs Utilities. Under the section external party, this will identify the supplier's primary point of contact that's responsible to negotiate this contract or oversee or moderate this contract. So we'll have the supplier's legal name. They'll always be referred to as contractor. Supplier contact is Jim Smith. In this case, Jim is the primary point of contact at Rich Test 1 that can negotiate this contract or edit the contract. And the signatory will be the person who's the authorized agent that can sign the contract on behalf of the company. Within GEP SMART, this is a critical point to understand. Only one person from your company can review and edit the contractual documents. If there's a need for others to be involved, Jim Smith in this case would have to download the contractual documents, send them via email to the appropriate parties, have those parties edit the documents. Jim would have to consolidate all changes, all comments back into one consolidated document and then upload it back into GEP SMART. Otherwise, Jim could call a meeting with all the appropriate parties within the company, and he could then proceed to edit the document, add comments online versus outside the system, and then proceed to submit it. But unfortunately, at this point in time, GEP does not allow more than one person to review and edit the contractual documents from the supplier's point of view. So if I go back to external party in the system, these are the fields that we just referred to. Term section. Well, this identifies the terms associated with this contract. Currency will always be US dollars. Payment terms are terms mutually agreed upon by both parties as it relates to the payment of invoices. Commencing on will either be the effective date or the last signature date. And in most cases, we will be using the effective date of the contract. And the effective date we define right here as I'm circling. To remain in effect, three options. It could be for a period of, it could be perpetually, or to date. For a period of, that defines a period of time that the contract will be in effect. So in this example, I'm saying for a period of 5 years. If remain in effect said perpetually, which also means evergreen, these fields, the effective period would go away because essentially we're saying this contract will not expire. Therefore, there's not an effective period or an effective end date. If this remain in effect said to date, then this effective period would be replaced by to date, and we would identify a specific date for when this contract will expire. The renewal. I either have the option to automatically renew this agreement or on need basis. So in this example here, if I select automatically, I'm going to identify a period of renewal. And in this example, I'm saying every 5 years, I can renew this contract twice. So in total, this contract could be extended for 15 years, right? A 5-year initial period with 2 renewals at 5 years each equals 15 years. If this said on need basis, the period of time would go away. And then once the contract is coming upon expiration, both parties would be notified of such and would work together to take the appropriate actions from a contractual perspective. So if I go back to the software, click on terms, these are the fields that we just spoke about. Under the section Notes and Attachments, the supplier can upload documents, attach notes, attach external links as needed. These are documents, notes, or external links that would support the contractual documents and negotiation. If I go back to the software, as a supplier, I can click on File Upload, and it's very easy to upload other documents. Just click on Upload Documents. That'll take you to your hard drive, or if you have a network drive, you can identify the applicable documents, double click on them, and they will upload into GEP. If you want to maintain notes against this contract, you can click on Notes, give a name of the note, and then provide a narrative or a description for future reference. And if you have external links, something that you want to reference, or you want to be able to go directly to that external link that supports the contractual negotiation, you can click on external link, give it a name, and then identify the URL, the address, click Save, and that link will be saved for you to access. Notifications. This section will inform the supplier for when the contract is going to expire. So if I go back to the software, click on Notifications, this will tell me that in 30 days, 90 days, 120 days, 180 days, it'll notify me by email that says, hey, Rich, your contract is going to expire. We need to take the appropriate actions before it does so. So it's just a great way to keep you informed of when your contract is going to expire. And then team identifies the utilities team that participated in the negotiation of this contract. So in this example, you'll see it's just myself, but typically there would be more parties involved in the negotiation of this agreement. But for training purposes, I'm keeping it really simple. It's just a one team show today. Okay. Any questions before we move on to the next tab? Okay. Under the tab Additional Information, this will reflect specific information that is directly tied to this contract. This information will be used by utilities for reporting purposes only. So even though you have visibility to it, it may not directly impact you as a supplier. But there's a lot of information we're collecting as it relates to other teams' requirements across the company, from an accounting and finance perspective, a tax perspective, safety and health, and so forth. We just want to be in a position to simplify the reporting process here at utilities. That's why we're asking the sourcing owner at utilities these specific questions so that we can make reporting much simpler and easy. But again, from a supplier's perspective, this information is more informational. So if I go back to the system and I go to additional information, this is where, as a supplier, I can view this information, but again, it may not really provide much insight for me. Okay, under the Contract Language tab, this is where you would click the document to review or amend the contractual documents. And so for training purposes, I'm only going to show one document. Typically, you would have a number of contractual documents in this section. You would have the master agreement along with all the applicable exhibits, supplemental documents, and as a supplier, you'll have the ability, when you're invited to do so, to review and edit those documents and submit your changes back to utilities. And so that's the process we'll go through now. You'll click on the document name, and then you'll click the checkout button. So I go back to the software, click on contract language, click on the name of the document, click out checkout. Then I'll bring you to the next step, which is open in Microsoft Word Online. And we'll proceed to do that step. Open in Microsoft Word Online. And then once that happens, the first thing you'll want to do once you get into Microsoft Word Online is change your drop-down status of editing to reviewing. This will ensure that your track changes is turned on. If you leave it in editing stage or status, your changes will not be tracked. So that's probably a really critical point to remember. And then once you do that, you can proceed to edit your document. And once you've completed your edits, you'll click on go back. Sorry, you'll click on this drop down, save to SMART by GEP. Then you'll click go back, and then you'll check it in. And you'll notice that the version of the document changed with your changes. And then you'll click go back. So if I go back to the software, it'll be a little bit easier to see it this way. I change my status bar to reviewing. I can then proceed to edit this document. I like this system. I can insert a comment. So under review, new comment, hello, post it. And then if I'm pleased with my edits and my comments, I then proceed to save to SMART by GEP. Click go back. Do not click the back arrow button. If you do so, it could put you into a system loop and you may lose your changes. So please click on Save to SMART by GEP, click go back, and then check the document back in. Once you've checked it back in, you'll have one final step. So under the contract details tab or page, you'll click on accept. And this is a little quirky, I think, from GEP, but in my mind, accept means submit. And so you'll click accept under the contract details page. This will submit your edited documents back to utilities. If I go back to the software and click go back, go to the contract details page, click on accept. I can even write a note, back to Rich at utilities. Hi, Rich. I have made minor changes to page 1. Click accept or submit. In my mind, I'm done. So I have now submitted my changes back to utilities. So then once the documents are in a final version, so let's say both parties get to a point where all the contractual documents, they're clean. So as a sourcing owner at utilities, I have to get them into a final format, right? And so I'll share my screen with you from a utilities perspective. So I will receive a task from you. So let me go back to my contracts page. And click on supplier training August 12th. I should have a task at the bottom where it says accept, and I do. So I would have the opportunity as a sourcing owner to go back to the contract language tab. I can review your edits and your comments, respond to them. But then let's say you and I, we get to a point, we're in agreement. We want to move forward. So if that's true, I would proceed to click accept. I can type an email on why I'm accepting this document. And then I can send for approval, internal approval based on our signatory policy. So I click for send for approval, I confirm it. Let's try that again. So that's telling me that I missed some information under additional information. So let me go back real quick. Let's see, what did I miss? Oh, here we go. All right. Now let's go back. Now let's send for approval. Say yes to confirm it. Send. And now I'm ready to send for supplier signature. So we have a final version of the document or documents. I send for supplier signature. I'm going to do it online. We do have the ability to negotiate and execute the agreement offline. We're not encouraging that. As a supplier, you must have Office 365 in order to work in this platform. You may want to check that out. But for training purposes, I'm going to select online and send. I'll confirm it. And then I will go back in as a supplier. And then I should have a new task. So if I look at my tab contract, there's supplier training August 12th. So I came back into my queue, my work queue. So I'll click on supplier training August 12th. And at the bottom, it should say sign contract. So as a supplier, I would proceed to sign the contract. I have to enter a password. To confirm, I have the authority to do so. I sign it, I confirm it. And from a supplier's point of view, I am done. I have executed this agreement. But from a utilities perspective, I'll go back into the system as a sourcing owner. I will refresh my screen. And you'll see that now I have a task to send for signature. So I will proceed to send for signature internally. I'll confirm it. I will refresh my screen. And then I can sign the contract. So I'll sign the contract same way that you just did. Click I have the authority to enter. Click sign, confirm it. And then the last step I have to do as a sourcing owner at utilities is that I need to execute the agreement. When I execute, it becomes a live document. So execute. And we are done. You and I have a live contract. So if I go back as a supplier and I refresh my screen and I go to the contract dashboard, there's supplier training August 12th that we just worked on, and it's live. Now, as a sourcing owner back at utilities, if I click go back, I can now amend this agreement. So if I need to do an amendment, a change order, do a task order, I can do so with the amend button. And then you and I would go through the same series of steps to negotiate that amendment. Any questions on how to negotiate and manage a contract? Okay, responding to a sourcing event. So when the RFX, and RFX stands for request for a quote, request for information, request for a proposal. When it's published, you as a supplier will be invited, and team members and yourself will receive an email. Suppliers will be required to click on the link within the email and respond to the RFX. When the supplier logs into GEP SMART, they will see an action pending. Proceed to click on the event name. So if I go back to the software and I go to my tasks, action pending under RFX, you'll see supplier training August 12th. Click on the event name. The first step when the supplier accesses the event is to review the general guidelines. To view guidelines, click on the document name. If supplier accepts, proceed to click on the box or boxes. And then we'll move on to the next step. The other feature I want to show you is at the very top of your page, it's called response closing in. Now, this one is saying response opening in, but when we go back to the page, you'll see response closing in, and it shows how much time you, the supplier, you have to submit your response. So I go back to the software, and also just very similar, like the contracts module, you'll see that there's specific sections for a sourcing event, and they're defined on the left-hand side also. But the first step that you're going to do as a supplier, you'll review the general guidelines as it relates to this request for proposal and the non-disclosure agreement. These are documents that cannot be edited by you. If you're not in agreement or you don't accept the information within these documents, you have the right to decline, and then you can provide a reason why. But as a supplier, I would proceed to click on the document name. This will allow me to read the language within this document or the requirements. And this has not changed from our current process. So this is really telling the supplier our requirements that you must comply with as it relates to this request for a proposal. Okay, so as a supplier, I would proceed to review the requirements. If I'm in agreement, I check the box. And then I would do the same thing with the non-disclosure agreement. I will review the language. If I agree, I will check the box. And then after I check both boxes, I then have to proceed to accept guidelines. So click on accept guidelines. As shown in the presentation here. And then once you do that, you'll proceed to check the box, my organization wishes to participate in this event, and then click on confirm participation. If you do not want to participate, decline the invitation. Do not check this box. When you decline the invitation, you'll be able to provide a reason why. So if I go back to the software, at the very bottom, check the box. I do wish to participate. Confirm my participation. Now I'm in the event. I can submit a response. And also you'll notice that the response closing in is shown at the top. So then if we talk through the various sections of this RFX, this RFP, we have a basic details section. This will identify the event name, a narrative or event description, the type of event, whether it's a request for proposal, request for quote, request for information. Event currency will always be in US dollars. The event overview, we're not going to be using at this point in time, but if I had a need to attach another document to provide you a more in-depth assessment or narrative of this event, I could do so here. And then, of course, we talked about the category, the business unit, and the region. in the previous slides. So if I go back to the software, here are the basic details we just talked about. The event timeline, this will identify the time zone and the start date and time, end date and time that the supplier has to respond to this event. If I go back to the software, look at event timelines, here's your start and end date and how long you have to respond. The buyer contact information section reflects the name of the sourcing owner at utilities, their role, email address, and contact number. So if I go back to the software, buyer contact information, there's my information. So again, as a supplier, I'm seeing all this information. The team member section reflects the supplier's team members that'll be responding to this RFP. Now you can have multiple team members as it relates to the sourcing event, but not the contract. You want to make sure that your team members, if they're going to respond, submit a response, they have to be a collaborator. So you want the boxes viewer and collaborator to be checked in order for them to submit a response or be able to edit the document or the sections. If needed, you, the supplier, can add team members by clicking on the Manage Contacts. So if I go back to the software, there's Rich Test 1, Jim Smith as a supplier, and Jim has the ability to click on Manage Contacts. He can add a new contact, again, basic information. So basic details, roles and responsibilities, contact details, business details, regional settings, and invite. And then click done, and I won't go through that exercise. But then once you've added them, they would come back here in this summary page, and you would provide them an access, whether they're going to be a collaborator, a viewer, or no access. Okay. Under the guidelines section, these are the guidelines that the supplier accepted at the very beginning of this event, but you have the opportunity to view them again in the section called guidelines if you need to refresh your memory of what the requirements are or if you had a question. So I go back to the software. There's the guidelines that we had talked about earlier. Under the contract term section, the contractual documents as it relates to this sourcing event will be displayed. The supplier can view each document by clicking on the document name. If the supplier does not have any changes to the documents, they can proceed to move on to the next section. And also you must check the box, I confirm that I have read all the contractual terms of this event. So that must be checked in order for you to submit your response. If the supplier has changes to the document, they will proceed to open the document and check out the document for editing as described from slides 35 through 38. So if I go back to slide 35 through 38, this is what we had talked about: check out, edit, check back in. And the nice thing here about this team is that you will not lose your changes. So when you proceed to edit the documents and you click go back, which I'll show you here in a minute, all your changes, all your comments will be saved. And then when let's say you're awarded the event and we flip it to a contract, so we want to begin contract negotiations, we will not lose your red line. And that's a great thing because now I'm not asking you to go back and review and redline all the contractual documents again. We'll have a baseline to work from. So if I go back to the software, again, I would confirm I read all the terms. But again, I can click on the document name. I can check it out. Open in Microsoft Word Online. Change my status bar to reviewing. Make my edits. Go back up to saving to Smart by GEP. Click on go back. Check it back in. Click go back. And I'm back to the main event page. But all my changes I made on this document are saved. And you can see here, it changed from version 1 to version 2. And it was modified by Jim Smith on this date. And the status was it's been checked back in. Okay. Under the questionnaire section, the supplier will proceed to open each document, each questionnaire, and respond to all the questions. If you don't respond to all the questions, you cannot submit. As reflected in this section, the supplier will see the evaluation type, and it will either be technical or commercial. They'll also see last modified by on your team from your team, last modified on, the number of questions that pertain to each questionnaire, and the response completion percentage. This must be 100% complete in order for you to submit, as described here on the next slide. So if we go back to the presentation or to the software, click on questionnaires, and I click on the questionnaire name. Again, we made this really simple. I'll say no exceptions taken for question number 1. They're asking me for a project narrative. I'll add any old document here just to show you guys how this works. You'll see that once it's totally green here, that means it's been uploaded. So then I close it. I go to question 3. Utilities is asking for my schedule. I'll attach my schedule. Again, I'm just picking any old document here. Say close, and I go on to question 4. They want my experience. So again, I will upload any document, close it, and you'll see that my response is 100% complete. I click done, which also is save. And if I go back to the questionnaire section, you'll see the response completion percentage is 100%. I have completed the questionnaire. But now keep in mind, you can have multiple questionnaires. Some of them could be technical, some could be commercial. And then the last section, the price sheet. The supplier will be responsible to submit their quote via the price sheet or price sheets. So you could have multiple price sheets that you have to respond to. As reflected in the price sheet section, the supplier will be able to see the price sheet name. Again, last modified by within your company, last modified on, and the response completion percentage. Same situation. This must be 100% complete in order for you to submit. To submit the quote, proceed to click on the price sheet name. And here's an example of a very simple material price sheet. And so here you'll see the columns. Do you intend to bid? Yes or no? As a supplier, those fields that are not shaded, you have the ability to respond to. So as a supplier for this example, I can respond to intent to bid, and I can input my price per unit of measure. Everything else I cannot edit, but it's information for informational purposes for me. The item name, item number, the annual volume, the unit of measure, and a computation of the total price based on annual volume times the price I'm submitting. Okay, and then once I've entered my information, I'll click done. And then once I've completed done, the response completion should be 100%. If I go back to the software, click on my simple price sheet here. It's only 2 items. Yes, I plan to bid on both. It's a chemical A, chemical B, part number, annual volume. And I'm going to say my price for chemical A will be $5 per gallon. And for chemical B, $10 per gallon. So it shows me an annual price of $125,000. If I'm happy with my submission, I click done. If I go back to the price sheet section, you'll see that it's 100% complete. And there's one section that did not show up in this example, but typically under the price sheet, there's another a section called attachments. And under attachments, this is where the supplier will be able to access other documents outside of the contractual documents and the questionnaires and the price sheets. So you might have a need to view material drawings, material specifications, statement of work documents, etc., in order for you to adequately respond to the questionnaires and the price sheet. So those documents would be available to you in the section called attachments. And typically, that would be reflected right under the price sheet section. Okay. If a supplier wishes to communicate with the utilities sourcing owner, they can do so by using the discussion forum. I relate this to like MS Teams chat. This is a great way to manage and track your discussion with the utilities team. To send a post, click on the discussion forum button. When you do that, another box will pop open, and you can start by drafting your communication in the open text field, what's in white. Click post when completed with drafting your communication. And to return to the main page of the event, you can either click on the back arrow button, or you can close this window because it will open in a separate window. And if you want to format the body of your message, there's some minor formatting features available to you. You can bold text, italicize, underline. You can align your text, change the font size, change the font itself, and again, then post it. So if we go through that exercise here, the very top, discussion forum, click on discussion forum. I may have to refresh my screen here. There we go. Go to the body of the message, type in, "Hi Rich, we need to talk." Please call me. And right click post, and this has gone back to utilities, to Rich Norton, who is the sourcing owner. Okay. And like I said before, then you can either close this window out, which probably makes the most sense, or you can click go back. But since you already have a window open with the main page, I would just go ahead and close this window out. And this will take you back to your main page. If you're happy with your response and you're ready to submit it, you'll simply click on the Submit Response button. When you do so, you'll get a confirmation pop up. Are you sure you want to submit your response? Say yes. And then you'll get a success. Response was submitted. Then click OK to close it out. If I go back to the software, I'll click Submit. I do want to confirm. Success. I have now officially submitted my response back to utilities. Let's say all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, I forget, oh my goodness, I forgot to attach a document. Or I want to revise my pricing. Or I want to revise how I responded to one of the questions. You have the opportunity to withdraw your response, but only when the response closing is still open. Okay, So to do that, you'll click on the withdraw response. You'll have to provide a reason why, and then that'll reopen your response. So if I go back to software, click on withdraw responses, confirm it, type in a reason why, need to make a price change. Post it. You'll see the status will change from withdraw to submit. Okay. Then you'll proceed to edit the various sections that you want to edit. And once you're happy, submit the response, confirm it, and again, provide, hi Rich, I'm done with my submission. Post. Success. So if I go back to my tasks as a supplier, I will see that I no longer have supplier training August 12th. I've completed my task. And that's the end of our session. So again, thank you for attending today's session. If you have any questions,